We are going to see about the RPI systems in the removable partial denture. So these are the contents which will discuss about the direct retainers, the different clasp used, and the I-bar removable partial dentures, and the RPI system which is used for the fabrications. So the introduction, which is RPI, stands for R is the rest, P is the plate which is mostly a proximal plate, and I is the clasp design which is an I-bar clasp. So the direct retainers, it is that component part of the RPD removable partial denture, so that is used to retain and prevent the dislodgement, consisting of a clasp assembly or a precision attachment according to GP9. And the types of direct retainer, it can be an intracoronal or extracoronal direct retainer. Under intracoronal there will be external, internal, stud attachment, bar and special attachments, whereas extracoronal there are closely approaching clasp and gingerly approaching clasp. So under the clasps there are types which is based on their design, such as circumferential or X clasps, such as simple circlet, reverse circlet, fish hook, embrasure, multiple circlet, ring clasp or combinations. Whereas the vertical projections are a bar or a roach clasp, which is gingerly approaching clasp. They are T clasp, modified T clasp, Y clasp, and I bar. So basically the I bar removable partial denture is special type of removable partial denture designed by Kratovich in 1963 to reduce tooth contact of the retainer. So the difference between I bar RPD and the regular RPD, it means the I bar RPD will have mesial rest, whereas in regular it will be distal rest. In I bar, it is the retainer is used for the direct retainer, where direct retention, whereas in regular RPD it is occlusally approaching retainer is used. So local long guide planes have been used in I bar, whereas no normal guide planes are used in only normal guide planes are used in regular RPD. And the design concept which is follows such as, it will have a I-bar partial denture with components such as rest, proximal plate, major and minor connector, denture base connector, and the retainers. So the mesial rest, which is the main functional of the mesial rest, is to provide a vertical support against the occlusal forces, and in order to prevent this function, perform this function, the rest must be of a sufficient bulk. It should withstand the direct occlusal forces and also the indirect forces which they are subjected. So anterior rest must meet the basic requirements of strength, positiveness, also the aesthetic consideration. So ideal anterior rest should be a crescent shaped cingulum rest. The cingulum rest can also be prepared directly in the enamel or on the bulky canine and maxillary central incisors, or can be implemented in the cast restorations. So the posterior rest, next coming to the posterior, it is designed to direct the vertical forces along the long axis of the tooth. So the premolars are prepared in marginal triangular ridges, molar extend into the central fossa. So in distal extension cases, the most distal rests are placed on the mesial aspect of the abutment teeth for two following reasons, such as anterior placement of the rest helps verticalize the forces of the occlusion on bearing mucosa. Also, the mesial rest directs tipping forces on the abutment mesially and tends to move the abutment tooth into firm contact. Next, coming to the other part, is the proximal plate. So additional proximal plate on the distal surface is provided. So the proximal plate covers the guide plane from marginal ridge to the tooth junction and extends onto the attached gingiva for about 2 mm. So the advantages of placing these plates, mostly of proximal plates, such as provides the horizontal stability, reunites and stabilizes the arch, increased retention because of parallelism, and protects the tooth tissue junction by preventing foot impaction on because of the metal coverage into that area. Also, that provides good reciprocation, distributes the occlusal forces towards the dentures. Other parts which have been included in this RPA system, such as major minor connectors and denture base connectors. So some of the modification of this I-bar RPD, such as rest, proximal plate and I-bar, rest, proximal plate and ACUS class, which is known as the RPA concept, which is a modification from this RPI concept. So RPI system, which is modified I-bar retainer system. So Kroll devised this in 1973. All the components of the I-bar assembly were modified significantly to fulfill the Kroll's design, which is known as the RPI system. And the principle of this Kroll's design was stress concentration, minimal tooth, and the gingival coverage. So the speciality of these dentures is that the direct retain is modified such that the retentive and reciprocal units of the clasp acts in the mesodistal direction. The main advantage of this adaptation of the design is the minimal tooth contact and the coverage produced by it. So these dentures are easy to maintain the oral hygiene in patient's point of view. Next is the modification of each component of the I-bar required to form the RPA system: mesial rest modification, proximal plate modification, and I-bar modification. So the mesial rest, how it is modified, such as the mesial rest extended only into the triangular fossa, even in the molar preparation, not into the central area. Also the canine rest are circular, concave. Depressions are prepared on the mesial marginal ridge, and it will not cover the entire marginal ridge. Proximal plate, which is modified in the part of introduce three modifications in the proximal plate, such as any one of these modification may be followed while designing the RPI retainer of the proximal plate. So modifications such as 1, 2 and 3 design modifications have been proposed for the proximal plate allowed in this RPI